So as every Monday we're reading from the Holy Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we're in Adi Lila, Chapter 1, the Spiritual Masters. And we're on text number 51. Jñānam parama-guhyaṁ me yad vijñāna-samanvitam sa-rahasyam tad-aṅgaṁ cha gṛhāṇa gaditam mayā jñānam parama-guhyaṁ me yad vijñāna-samanvitam sa-rahasyam tad-aṅgaṁ cha gṛhāṇa gaditam mayā. Jñānam, knowledge. Parama, extremely. Guhyam, confidential. Me, of me. Yet, which. Vijñāna, realization. Samanvitam, fully endowed with. Sa-rahasyam, along with mystery. Tat, of that. Aṅgam, supplementary parts. Cha, and. gṛhāṇa, just try to take up. Gaditam, explain. Mayā, by me. Translation: please hear attentively what I shall speak to you, for transcendental knowledge about me is not only scientific, but also full of mysteries. Please repeat. Please hear attentively what I shall speak to you, for transcendental knowledge about me is not only scientific, but also full of mysteries. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Transcendental knowledge of Śrī Kṛṣṇa is deeper than the impersonal knowledge of Brahman, for it includes knowledge not only of his form and personality, but also everything else related to him. There is nothing in existence not related to Śrī Kṛṣṇa. In a sense, there is nothing but Śrī Kṛṣṇa. And yet, nothing is Śrī Kṛṣṇa, save and except his primeval personality. This knowledge constitutes a complete transcendental science. And Viṣṇu wanted to give Brahmājī full knowledge about that science. The mystery of this knowledge culminates in personal attachment to the Lord, with the resulting effect of detachment from anything non-Kṛṣṇa. There are 9 alternative transcendental means of attaining this stage: hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, worshipping, praying, assisting, fraternizing with the Lord, and sacrificing everything for Him. These are different parts of the same devotional service, which is full of transcendental mystery. The Lord said to Brahma that since he was pleased with him, by his grace, the mystery was being revealed. Jñānam parama-guhyaṁ me yad vijñāna-samanvitam sa-rahasyaṁ tad-aṅgaṁ cha gṛhāṇa gaditam mayā. Please hear attentively what I shall speak to you, for transcendental knowledge about me is not only scientific, but also full of mysteries. Om-ajñāna-timirandasya gyanam-gyanashalakaya chakṣurum-militam Deena tasmai Śrī Gurave namah. Śrī Chaitanya-manobhistam sthapitam jena bhutale sayam rupa-kadamayam dadati svapadandiyam adadana-sarandam-dairidam yache puna-puna srimad-rupa-padam-bhujo dulisyam janma-janmani. Jai Śrī Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Śrī Advaita Gadadhar Śrīvāsadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubheva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. So the Lord is telling that his knowledge about him is very scientific and at the same time full of mysteries. And the impersonalists, they're unable to penetrate those mysteries. They stop at the effulgence of the Lord, which is all-pervading, formless, everywhere, eternal. So they miss the mystery that Krishna is a transcendental personality. Just like Prabhupada gives the example that there was one small village and they made a rail line to that village. So for the first time everyone was going to see the train. It was a very small village. And as usual, in India, the train was late. So people were waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, in the distance, they heard a great sound and saw light. They saw light coming from the distance. So those who were impatient, they left. They went back to the village, said, "We have seen the train. It is a big light and a big sound." Some were a little more patient. They waited. Then they saw some big iron thing that was making noise and smoke was coming out of the smokestack. I have seen those days when we used to go on the train and all the smoke would come back and make all your nice white cloth speckled with black spots. Now most of the trains are diesel, but those days they were steam engines. So they went back to the village. They told, "Oh, it is a big iron thing and smoke is coming out. We have seen the train." But those who were most patient, they waited and waited. Finally the train came, they saw the engine, they saw the cars, they saw the caboose, they saw the engineer, they saw the conductor, they saw everyone. So realization of the Supreme is like that. First is the great light. Most people, they stop at that. Oh, God is a great light. And our business is to merge into that light and become one. But we recite every day, Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Vasyatya Desa Sarare. Not just Pasatya days, actually it's all over the world. Vasyatya means Western countries, we find also, mainly in India, people have this impersonal idea that we should merge into the Supreme. Just like Prabhupada always used to criticize Dr. Radhakrishna. He had a doctorate. Very scholarly fellow. But Krishna told Arjuna, you surrender unto me. Manmana bhava bhakto majaji mam namaskuru. Very simple instruction. Manmana, you think of me. Bhava, become my devotee. Worship me. Very simple instruction. But he said, it is not to the personality of Krishna that we have to surrender, but the unborn eternal within Krishna. So Prabhupada used to say, just see, he's a big scholar, he doesn't know. Krishna inside, outside is all the same. It's very simple. Krishna is standing there, he's telling Arjuna, you surrender to me. Anyone can understand. Krishna is standing there. If I tell you I'm thirsty, bring me a glass of water, and you pour it on the wall, then I'll think you're a fool. I'm the one who's thirsty. So Krishna says, you surrender to me, you think of me, you become my devotee. Very simple instruction. But he can't understand. This is a mystery. But here, because Viṣṇu is pleased with Lord Brahma, Lord Brahma was meditating upon him. So, in fact, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, I'm revealing all of this to you, Arjuna, because you are my devotee and I'm very pleased with you. Priyosi me, bhaktosi me, priyosi me. You're very dear and you're a devotee. So only the devotees can understand the deep mystery of Bhagavad Gita. And this was Prabhupada's main business. We see almost every lecture, you listen to Prabhupada's lectures, almost every lecture he's harping on this point. That Krishna is the supreme person. That's why he says personality of Godhead. Prabhupada's main business was to drive out this formless and nameless whatever. And he gives so many arguments. He's just like, Prabhupada gives the example of a cloud, of a mountain. From a distance it appears there's a dark cloud on the horizon. As we come closer, we see, oh, it is a green mountain. We shall see something big and green. And when we finally get there, we see there's trees and little chipmunks and squirrels and deer and rivers and flowers, so many things. Aim is the same, everybody's seeing the same thing. But according to his different perspective, they're seeing a little bit differently. So everyone's looking for the supreme absolute truth, but only those who are very dear to Krishna. Who's dear to Krishna? Those who think of him, worship him. Just like Śrī Kṛṣṇa was telling yesterday, everybody, they're in a Kurukshetra, they're at a conference of Bhagavad Gita, nobody's talking about Krishna. Prabhupada was getting angry and he was showing his anger and impatience. They're sitting in Kurukshetra. What is Kurukshetra? That's where Krishna spoke. Krishna spoke to Arjuna. He says, you become my devotee, you worship me, you surrender to me. And nobody's talking about Krishna. So we're so very fortunate that Prabhupada has revealed all these mysteries because he's receiving knowledge through Guru Parampara. Because by the ascending process, trying to understand, we're tiny, we're trying to understand God, we're trying to go up, ascending. And then we'll just fall into the big abyss of impersonalism. We'll slip off the cliff of scaling the truth and fall into the abyss of impersonalism. Prabhupada gives the example of the cat and the monkey. Every day we're seeing the monkeys, unfortunately. So a certain time of year, you see all the monkeys have babies. And you'll see the babies, when the mother wants to go somewhere, the baby is clinging onto her chest and she's jumping. So by his own strength, he's holding on. So we have seen, we've lived here long enough to see that sometimes the monkey slips and falls off the mother. Boom! And especially in Western countries, we have very much experience of cats. Here they're very, very difficult to see. Yesterday we saw one look like a lion, yellow lion in MBT. Very difficult to see cats. But Western countries, we have very much experience of cats. That they give their baby someplace, and then when they want to go, they take the baby by the neck and carry it to the next place, by the strength of the mother. Otherwise the monkey, the baby is trying to hold on by his own strength. But in the cat, by her strength, she's carrying that kitten. The kitten has no danger of falling. No danger of falling. So if we try to ascend to understand the absolute truth, then we'll just slip off the cliffs and fall into the big abyss of impersonal philosophy. But in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna emphasizes the descending process. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarsyo vidu. By this parampara, parampara, for one person to next person to next person, parampara, parampara, parampara. Just like Prabhupada gives the example, because it's the only nice thing about this hot season is mangoes. So the mangoes on the top of the tree where they get the light, they become ripe first. So the best mangoes are on the top of the tree, but that's very far up. So the little boys, they throw rocks up and try to knock those mangoes down. But the ripe mango, he's still very tight. Only one who will fall is a rotten mango. One who's already rotten, he will fall. But what they do is they get one person on one branch, one person on another branch, then they pick that mango, and they give it to the next person, to the next person, and to the next person, reach the ground intact. So transcendental knowledge is like that. Tene Brahma Vrida Yadavikai. We read this verse the other day. The Krishna revealed this knowledge to Brahma within the heart. And Brahma, he gave it to his son Narada, Narada to Vyas. It is coming down, parampara, parampara, param, by this disciplic succession. Because this is Imam Rajarsyo, all the great kings, they understood it in this way, by parampara. Now everyone wants to show himself off as a big philosopher. So everybody knows Krishna's Bhagavad Gita is a very important book. So they take Krishna's book and present their own philosophy. Prabhupada said, you make your own book, you don't touch my book. You want to present your philosophy, you make your own book. You don't take Krishna's book. Don't change Krishna's book. It is understood only through Guru Parampara. Krishna had spoken in Bhagavad Gita that this is how it is to be understood. So we're very fortunate. Prabhupada has given this knowledge coming down through disciplic succession. So we get the full knowledge of the absolute truth. Just like when I became a devotee, I had one friend who was named Sunshine. Those who were from my generation will understand. Had nothing to do with the sun. Anyway, later he became Srivas. But he couldn't understand Krishna consciousness at all because he was very deep into Buddhism, nirvishesha. So this personal philosophy he couldn't understand, but somehow or other, he said, you were the only sane person I ever met in the material world, and I couldn't understand how you became a devotee. So he kept coming back, he kept coming back. Then finally he met some bloop devotee who explained to him that it's not that Prabhupada denies the impersonal aspect. He says that is also there, but the personal aspect is higher. Then he began to understand Bhagavad Gita. Then he came back and became a devotee. And he was one of the first people to go to South America and preach because he knew Spanish. He'd lived in the Andes and traveled quite a bit. So he went with some sannyasi to South America and began to preach. So all three aspects are there. The impersonal aspect is also there. Paramatma is also like yogis, they're trying to see the Lord within the heart. But the highest aspect is to have a loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada emphasized this point. I was, when I first came in contact with Bhagavad Gita, this was strange wording, Supreme Personality of God. Sounds nice though. I loved it, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But gradually, as we began to understand, Prabhupada was emphasizing this personality. So only by we can enter into the mysteries of this understanding by the mercy of someone who's coming in disciplic succession, Guru Parampara. The knowledge comes down. That knowledge will come perfect. Our own knowledge trying to go up, just like by our own perception, we can see the sun is a little tiny ball in the sky. But from the scientists we learned that actually the sun is huge, millions of times bigger than the earth. Even our Vedic science also says the sun is huge. But by our perception, it is a tiny ball in the sky. So our senses are imperfect, they commit mistakes, and we're able to be illusioned. Sometimes on Facebook, people send these optical illusions around. You look at the thing, and you think you see it, then all of a sudden you see from a different angle, you suddenly see there's something else there that you didn't see. So we're able to be illusioned. It's a whole magicians. Their whole art is just illusion. There's no magic. As they say, the hand is quicker than the eye. Somehow they do things. Just by, they distract us by watching something else, and with the other hand they do something, boom, some so-called magic happens. So our equipment to understand the truth is defective. We commit mistakes, we're under illusion, and our senses are imperfect. Just like the closest thing to our eye is our eyelid. Has anybody seen their eyelid? Nobody's seen their eyelid. It's the closest thing to our eye, but nobody's seen it. And if something's too far away, we can't see. So our senses are imperfect. We commit mistakes. It's like famous saying in English, to err is human. To blame it on someone else is more human. That's Murphy's corollary. And we have tendency to cheat. Just see, Prabhupada says, he's illusion, he makes mistakes, and still he's presenting his philosophy. This is great philosophy. His whole philosophy that God is great white light. Impersonal, no form, no name, nothing, no variety whatsoever. But very carefully he puts this picture on the back of his book. God himself, he has no form. We don't have any picture of God. But that Bhogi Yogi, he's got his nice picture there with his big long beard and his beady eyes and hair all over the place. So he's cheating. He has no perfect knowledge to give us, but he's presenting it. Just like I remember one time we were at a college program with a wonderful devotee named Rivadinandan Swami. And he was talking about the miseries of this world. Birth, death, disease, and old age. We preached this our whole life. Now we're experiencing the disease and old age part firsthand. So he was preaching about these things, one student stood up, he said, no, it's just that we think that we're going to grow old, so we grow old. We think we're going to get, if we think positive, these things won't happen to us. We think we've been conditioned to think that we're going to die, so therefore we die. But if we think positive, we don't have to die. We don't have to get disease. He was going on presenting some silly philosophy like this. And everybody knows that's nonsense. Oh, the guy got so angry. He left the assembly. One other boy jumped up and started, yes, he's right, he's right. No, actually, the other boy jumped up and said, oh, he's right, he's right. And he got so angry at Maharaj, he left the assembly. So afterwards, we had a nice feast. That poor boy, he didn't get the feast. But the one who presented the philosophy, I sat down next to him to see if he really believed that thing. No, I just wanted to see what the Swami would say. And somebody believed him and ran and missed the feast. So in these wonderful books of Srila Prabhupada, we're getting real bona fide knowledge. Down through parampara, we're getting the actual picture of Krishna. Every day we get to see the wonderful forms of Krishna, of Sri Gaurnitai, Sri Krishna Balaram, Sri Radha Shyam Sundar. Every day we're seeing the beautiful forms. This is all the great mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So somehow or other we've been able to, by the mercy of pure devotee of the Lord, we've been able to enter into these mysteries of transcendental science. Prabhupada says it's science. So this is science. Krishna is the supreme. Just like Prabhupada always used to say, if you're a person, where you got your personality? Your father must have been a person. If you go back, his father was his father was his father. If you go back, so where have you got this personality? How can you say God has no personality? God has no form. Then you're putting limit. First of all, everyone knows that the definition of God is unlimited. But you're putting limit. God is unlimited, but He can't have a form, He can't have a name, He can't have a personality. Who gave you the authority to put limits on God? Who gave you the authority to put limits on God? God is unlimited. He can have a form and still be unlimited. This is not conceivable by our tiny brain. But God is that point where all contradictions meet. Just like the Upanishads say, He walks, He has no feet, but He walks faster than anyone. He has no eyes, but He sees everywhere. He has no hands, but He accepts everything offered to Him. These are our tiny brain cannot comprehend, but God is like that. I mean, if we could understand God, then we ourselves must be God. So God means that who's completely beyond our conception. Therefore we have to receive knowledge down through Guru Parampara. We are so fortunate that Prabhupada has given us these wonderful books. And every day Prabhupada is harping on this point. We should try to go deeply and to try to understand these things by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, and we'll come to the proper conclusion. So anyway, we'll stop here. Somehow one of those, I guess two of those things are disease and old age, so we're not feeling well today, so we'll stop here. Any questions? We'll try to give an answer to those questions. No questions, everybody fell asleep in my class. Where's our microphone? I can't hear.
Must be the stars. It's 3 days, no classes, only no questions.
Huh?
Can you read the next verse?
Can we read the next verse? Of course. Next verse continues, I read it last night, it continues the same theme. Yavanaham yatha bhavo yadrupa guna karmaka tataiva tattva vijñānam astute mad anugrahat. By my causeless mercy, be enlightened in truth about my personality, manifestations, qualities, and pastimes. I'll read that again. By my causeless mercy, be enlightened in truth about my personality, manifestations, qualities, and pastimes. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The transcendental personal forms of the Lord are a mystery, and the symptoms of these forms, which are absolutely different from anything made of mundane elements, are also mysterious. The innumerable forms of the Lord, such as Shyama Sundar, Narayan, Rama, and Gaur Sundar, the colors of these forms, white, red, yellow, cloud-like, Sham, and others, His qualities as a responsive personality of Godhead to pure devotees, and His impersonal Brahman to dry speculators. His uncommon activities like lifting Govardhan hill, marrying more than 16,000 queens at Dwarka, and entering the rasa dance with the damsels of Braj, expanding Himself in as many forms as there were damsels in the dance. These and innumerable other uncommon acts and attributes are all mysteries, one aspect of which is presented in the scientific knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, which is read and adored all over the world by all classes of scholars, with as many interpretations as there are empiric philosophers. The truth of these mysteries was revealed to Brahma by the descending process, without the help of the ascending one. The Lord's mercy descends to a devotee like Brahma, and through Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyas, from Vyas to Sukadev, and so on in the bona fide chain of disciplic succession. We cannot discover the mysteries of the Lord by our mundane endeavors. They are only revealed by His grace to the proper devotees. These mysteries are gradually disclosed to the various grades of devotees in proportion to the gradual development of their service attitude. In other words, impersonalists who depend upon the strength of their poor fund of knowledge and listen to this, morbid speculative habits, without submission and service in the forms of hearing, chanting, and others mentioned above, cannot penetrate to the mysterious region of transcendence, where the supreme truth is a transcendental person, free from all tinges of material elements. Discovering the mystery of the Lord eliminates the impersonal feature realized by common spiritualists who are merely trying to enter the spiritual region from the mundane platform. Nirvizesha Sunivari Vasyacha Desa Tarani. This is why Prabhupada has this wonderful prayer. So again, throughout this whole purport, Prabhupada is banging on this same point. That Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. We have it on the authorities. I was sitting in the garden with Prabhupada in LA one time. And Prabhupada said, we accept the big guns. Because he was talking, there was some fellow named Guru Maharajji, and everybody's saying he's the 14-year-old incarnation of God or something like that. So Prabhupada said, who said he's God? We accept the big guns. Brahma, Shiva, Vyasa, we accept the big guns. They're all saying that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Who is saying this little boy is the personality of Godhead? So this is the secret to entering into the mysteries of Krishna. We have to accept the big guns. And Lord Brahma, he says, Ishvara parama-Kṛṣṇa. Everyone is a little bit of a controller. I have a little bit of control over my personal activities or my family. Or sometimes I may be the mayor over my city. I may be the chief minister over my state. I may be the prime minister over the country. But the supreme, Ishvara Parama, the supreme controller, Kṛṣṇa, very clearly, Lord Brahma says Kṛṣṇa. And then he says Satchidananda Vigraha. He has form, but that form, we think that we have this form. It's got so many difficulties. It gets sick. We do some little thing and we stub our toe, just like we never get any pleasure from our toe. There's nothing anybody walks around, oh, my toe, just so wonderful. Nobody's getting any pleasure from his toe. But you stub it, oh, then we start going back to our high school days and use that type of language we never usually use. So we think if God has a form, if he stubbed his toe, he'll get also the same pain. No. Satchidananda Vigraha. God's form is eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. Our form is complete opposite. Asat, ajnana, and niranand. But Krishna is Satchidananda Vigraha. Eternal bliss and knowledge. We can't conceive. We've never come to that conclusion ascending. But by hearing from the bona fide spiritual master through the parampara, we can understand. It's like I remember one time in Boulder, we used to chant right outside the University of Colorado at Boulder on a place they called the Hill. It was a little bit higher than the rest of the city. It was just called the Hill. We used to chant there. So sometimes young students would come and start talking with us. I remember we were just going back to the temple and one boy came up and he started talking about how God is beyond words. He's the all-expanding light. And Srivas and I, we just rubbed our hands. Oh, we got a live one, you know. So we started blasting from both ends, both sides. He came back. He was so amazed at our philosophy. He came back to the temple. He became a devotee. He became Paramahamsa Swami. Sometimes you see this beautiful round moonlight face with Prabhupada. That's Paramahamsa Swami. I remember he started spouting all this impersonal philosophy. Srivas and I, we just rubbed our hands. Oh boy, we got one. So, anyway, we should take this wonderful knowledge that Srila Prabhupada has given to us and study very carefully. And Prabhupada used to argue. He would take the position of the impersonalist, and Prabhupada presents so many arguments, just to train us up. Just like, I can remember Kumbh Mela, there you run into the big Mayavadis. And we know a couple little verses that from here and there to prove that if somebody has, that Brahman is not by birth but by karma and activities. But if you run into one of these big impersonals, just like the Ganga, they will throw verses at you that without being born in India, without being born in a Brahmin family, without being, there were thousands of verses they will throw at you just like the Ganga flowing. To prove that you cannot become a devotee unless you follow them. So Prabhupada used to argue with us just to train us up. Because you run into these big Mayavadis and you're just shocked when they throw so many verses from Shastra. Just like in Roy Ramanand Sambad. He was quoting from Shastra and Mahaprabhu saying, no. He even quoted our favorite verse. He says, Sarvadharmam parityaja mamekam saranam braja. This verse everybody knows, even in sleep. What is that verse at the end of 18th chapter? Even in your sleep you say, Sarvadharmam Parityajya. And Mahaprabhu said, no, eho bhaya. He said, then he quoted one verse, jñānam prayasam udapasya nabandeva jivanti sanmukaritam bhavadi vartam stane sita srutigatam tanuman manobir yaprayaso jita jito prasitais trilokyam. The Mahaprabhu said, yes. So jñānam prayasam. Prayas means attempt. The attempt, ascending process. Jñānam prayasam udapasya. Prabhupada translates on the tape, udapasya means kick it out. Lati marke. Kick it out. Jñānam prayasam udapasya namanteva jivanti sanmukaritam bhavadi vartam. We should hear from those who are devotees. Mukaritam, from the mouth of the devotees. Sanmukaritam. In Sanskrit, when T's and D's come in front of a letter like an M or N, then they become N or M also. So Sanmurkha means Satmurkhi. Sat means the devotee, who's only speaking Satya, the truth. Satmukaritam, from the mouth of the pure devotees. You hear. Jivanti, you lead your life like this, just hearing from the mouth of the pure devotees. Jivanti Sanmurkha Bhavadiyavartam. Bhavadiyavartam talks about you. Everybody's every day, everybody's talking about who won the cricket match or who's going to be the next captain. And so many things they're talking about. And everybody's talking about Putin and Zelensky and who this and that. So many Barta. Everybody's chatting. But Lord Brahma says, Bhavadi, about you, chatting, we should chat about Krishna. We're chatting about so many things. Bhavadi Vartam. Stane stita. You stay in your place. Whatever you're doing, you don't have to give up your family, you don't have to go to the Himalayas and sit in the pool of water in the snow in the winter and fire in the summer. Stane stita. Say whatever you're doing, you continue. Srutigatam. You go on hearing about Krishna. And offering tanuvan manobir, and offering respects with your body, mind and heart. Tanuman manobir. By this prayer, ye prayaso jita jitopasitos trilokyam. That person who is ajita, who nobody can conquer God, he's unconquerable. Ajita. Jita. On the tape you can hear Prabhupada say, Jita. He becomes conquered just by this hearing. Therefore, Prabhupada instituted this process. Every morning we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from the mouth of the pure devotees. That person in the three worlds who cannot be conquered, he becomes conquered. Krishna just amazed. Just like we used to get the class on the radio. For some reason it's not coming these days, but anyway. So somebody got me radio, and that radio, there's so many channels, and it's got three different bands, and you go so many channels and 4 different bands, and you go, nobody's talking about Krishna. Just on this 99.FM. Somehow you get this class, you hit the RT. There's so much talking is going on. Somebody actually sat down to hear about Krishna. Krishna is amazed. He becomes shocked. And you're able to conquer him. In all the 3 worlds, he's unconquerable. Jita, he becomes conquered by this process. Even I heard of one day, Prabhupada said, even if you don't practice, if you just go on hearing, you will reach perfection. Of course, the more you practice, the more what you hear you bring into your life, the faster the realization will come. The faster the realization will come. But Prabhupada said, just this hearing is so important. That's why he kicked out the rest. Sarvadharma, you just surrender to God. Everybody's got some, Kali is God, Ganesh is God, Hanuman is God. Everybody's got some idea who's God. First you hear who's God, then you can surrender. So Mahaprabhu rejected this. No, not that one. This one. You hear about Krishna from this the devotees, then you can surrender to Krishna. Hare Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Divine Grace of the Prabhupada ki jai.